Welcome to Let's Talk, a podcast series by the Electrochemical Safety Research Institute at Underwriters Laboratories. In the Let's Talk podcast series, we share conversations with experts and scientists in the field of energy storage systems, safety science, and standards, and learn about their experiences and vision. Batteries are ubiquitous in our daily lives, powering personal electronic devices to electric vehicles. These batteries are also used to store energy from the grid and power plants that can be used later. In combination with renewable energy sources such as solar and wind, batteries can provide cleaner energy source and can address the intermittent nature of solar and wind energy. To talk more about battery energy storage systems, our guest today is Sharon Bonesteel. Sharon was awarded the 2021 Breakout Woman of the Year from the Energy Storage Association for her work on ESS safety training. She is a senior policy analyst, manager, codes and standards initiative at the Salt River Project, or SRP, where she leads SRP's ESS Codes and Safety Team. She is a licensed architect in Arizona and California, an ICC certified building official, a commercial energy inspector, and an Arizona certified fire inspector. Sharon serves as SRP's voting representative to the NFPA and ICC code development process. Hi, Sharon. Welcome to the Let's Talk podcast, and thank you for accepting our invitation to have this conversation.
Happy to be here, Tapesh.
You have got an extensive list of qualifications and responsibilities. Can you please talk about some of the work you do in the area of energy storage systems?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We really are at an exciting stage in the development of energy storage systems, and my interest has just grown and grown over the years. My work involves many aspects, from the development of codes and standards at the national level to developing best practices for the safe deployment of the batteries in our built environment, and also looking at safe deployment for SRP's transmission and distribution systems. My codes and safety team includes a great group of people from across SRP, and we're looking at the impact of batteries on our overall utility operations. And this includes helping out whenever we can on various studies and pilot studies and deployments that are going on. This may be a 1 megawatt battery at a substation, or setting up a test facility to look at batteries for electric vehicle fast charging stations, or one of our last big things was assisting with the deployment of 34 Tesla megapacks at our Agua Fria generating plant. And we're an enterprise team, which means we're bringing people from across the company together. We're identifying issues and developing solutions, all as SRP evaluates the benefits to our customers of energy storage system and other inverter-based resources on our grid. So I'm happy to be here to talk with you.
Hey, that's great. So you explained quite a bit of diverse applications. So I wanted to ask you, batteries are often long together despite many chemistries such as lead acid, lithium ion, redox flow, and other chemistries. For applications in energy storage systems, what are some of the parameters you look at when choosing the right battery energy storage system?
Well, I think, I have to quote one of my mentors, horses for courses, or as they say in the real estate business, the first parameter is location, location, location. Where do you plan to install that battery is the first big question. We're doing a lot of training for first responders at our installations, and making sure you understand where that battery is in terms of the surrounding community, or whether it's in a building. That's really critical. And some battery types have been around for years. They've been utilized in uninterrupted power systems or UPS applications, and they're safe and they're reliable, but they're big and heavy and they have a large footprint. Right now, lithium-ion batteries they're the sexy answer. They're energy dense, they're lightweight, and they have several positive attributes. And everybody wants to go automatically to lithium-ion, but it also has some fire hazard challenges. So, we have new lithium-ion chemistries, NMC, the zinc, some of the iron batteries. Solid electrolyte batteries are being developed, and they're all looking to solve that fire hazard issue associated with some of the original lithium ion. And the second parameter I have to say is, how do you plan to use it? Is it planned for peak shaving or for emergency backup? Cycle life is really critical for your cost effectiveness if you're doing peak shaving, where you're going to be constantly charging and discharging. So you need batteries that can handle that. In more of a UPS use, maintenance costs might be really critical, or maybe duration, but those batteries have to sit for long periods of time in a float sort of scenario, and then they must be there when you need them. So the two parameters I think are most important are the location on where you're going to install the battery, and second, how do you plan to use it?
That's great. So that leads to my next question you have. As you mentioned, some of the advantages of battery energy storage systems is in providing flexibility based on demand and integration with renewables. Those are exciting advantages, right? So what are some of the hurdles that need to be addressed for wider adoption of battery energy storage for grid applications?
Well, I think our grid in general is becoming more engaged with inverter-based resources. And those old models for supply and demand, they're outdated. And new models that account for things like electric vehicles, whether they're charged at home or at work or on a fast charger, models that account for solar, wind, and other renewable resources are being developed. They're not totally fleshed out yet. But thank God we have computers to manage all of those generation sources so we can deploy them in the best manner. What we have found so far, I think, is that energy storage systems will play a big role in addressing the dip or the ramp, whatever you want to call it, that transition between when these intermittent generation resources are operational and when they're not. SRP customers still want generation capacity even when it's a cloudy day. So that energy storage is really critical. We want to make sure we have the most reliable energy available for our customers, and that's going to be answered by batteries.
Okay, great. And I wanted to ask you about utilizing batteries from applications such as electric vehicles after they have reached their end of life for that particular application. So these batteries could have lost up to 20% of their original capacity, but they still have quite a lot of energy that can be useful for alternative applications, right? So what are some of the issues that need to be taken care of to make it more applicable, to make it more appealing for such second life applications for used batteries?
Well, think about what you would like to know if you were buying a used car. Get the Carfax. Was it in an accident? Was it driven by a race car driver or the little old lady from Pasadena? Or was it just driven to church and the grocery store? Has it been well maintained? It gets its checkup, it gets its oil change. These are the same kind of issues with second life batteries. As a person who is repurposing a battery, I want to know the answers to those same questions. Now, UL Standard 1974, the standard for evaluating the safety and performance of repurposed batteries, is a good guide to determine the safety and performance of a second life battery. So finding appropriate end-of-life solutions, whether that is a second life or deconstruction, is an important task for our battery-based economy. And again, a lot of it has to do with what's the battery been through in its life up to this point, and that tells you a lot about whether it's going to be proper for your future use. So,
and people are installing energy storage systems in homes. Although it is minimal, there are risks of safety incidents resulting from fire, right? So do you think existing codes and standards do a good job at addressing safety risks associated with energy storage systems used in residential spaces? Or are there any gaps that you would like to see addressed?
well, one of the things to keep in mind is that the codes and standards are updated every 3 years. And that just isn't fast enough to keep up with the changing battery technology. Then you need the states or the local jurisdictions to adopt these codes and standards and put them into law. And that usually takes another 2 years. Some of these jurisdictions are going to adoptions every 6 years, which creates an even worse situation with all these new technologies. So I think adopting the most current codes is very, very critical. Another item is that people need to realize that the battery may not be the cause of the fire. But once it's engaged, it still creates the same kind of hazards as if it was the cause. Now, we put sprinkler systems in single-family homes into the residential code, and there are a lot of jurisdictions that pulled those requirements out when they adopted the code. So it really comes down to making sure you're on the latest codes and standards. And I think we also need to work at getting to the point where we have listing and labeling that is similar to what we have on stoves or on furnaces, where we're talking about exact installation guidelines that really get detailed in terms of the safe deployment of those particular storage systems in the single family residence, because you don't always have the same kind of staff readily available to maintain and take care of a battery. And even if you do have an incident in your home that's not caused by the battery, what happens to the battery afterwards? Are the customers asking those questions? And is there actually somebody out there doing the follow-up on those batteries after the incident? So I think there are some gaps, most certainly.
That's interesting. And there are, as you notice, occasional safety incidents affecting battery energy storage systems, like the Arizona incident and other incidents that occurred with ESS installations in South Korea and Australia. You are a certified fire inspector as well. Are there any parallels you see when studying battery fire incidents from energy storage systems?
Very interesting question. I think the first point is that quality workmanship always matters, whether it's in the cell manufacturing process, the pack fabrication, the wiring within the system, or the wiring of the completed system. If you have low quality workmanship, you have a higher risk of an incident occurring. And along with that quality workmanship is also quality materials. Are you using conductors with the right ratings on them? And we really need to invest in this country in making sure that the labor associated with an energy storage system reliant economy is well trained. Have they had the kind of training necessary to make sure that they are doing quality workmanship on these installations? I think the second point is right along those same lines: education, communication, and pre-incident planning. When all the parties are educated in the risks and hazards and they're trained in the proper emergency response activities, then we're all a lot safer. And I think looking at the incidents you identified, those were key factors that will make a difference going forward in terms of safer energy storage system deployment.
Thank you. And I want to ask you about responding to fire incidents, right? So let's say there is a fire. So what are the current level of prevention methods and mitigation methods, as well as firefighting measures that are available to treat those incidents, and are they sufficient?
Well, I think, when you're talking about minimizing safety incidents, first of all, you have to choose the right battery for the job. Putting a battery that has a high probability of having a thermal incident and next door to a daycare center is not a very smart decision. So first of all, make sure you've got the right battery for the job. Not every job needs the same kind of chemistry. Second, that whole development and communication of the emergency response plan with all the parties involved is extremely critical. Part of the current issue is making sure that all first responders are fully educated in what the proper response techniques are. So, the initial training of what a thermal incident is and what thermal runaway is, and the fact that water will not put out a lithium-ion fire, those key factors have to be the foundation for some continuing education on what the new chemistries are. As of right now, the water is basically used to cool the battery cells, to prevent the internal heat from transitioning to adjacent cells and resulting in your thermal runaway. You really can't put out the cell fire until all the energy from the battery cell is gone. There are other non-aqueous sort of suppressants. Each of them has their own advantage and disadvantage. The thing you need to look at is those quite often are one shot, and if it doesn't fix it in that shot, well, then you kind of need a backup solution. In some cases, if it's not a battery cell that's causing the incident, it's instead a wiring fire, and then some of those non-aqueous systems will put that out and you're good to go. But they don't all put out a lithium-ion fire. So I think a lot of our attention right now is being focused on gas detection and ventilation of cabinets and those sort of areas, because part of the real hazard is if those gases reach the explosive level, then any kind of a spark will set them off, and that's when people really get hurt. So I think minimizing safety instances choose the right battery, make sure it's a quality battery, make sure you get a quality installation, make sure you follow up and inspect that on a regular basis. And second, develop and communicate your emergency response plan with all the parties, because it doesn't matter how safe you think your battery is. I remember a quote from the gentleman, Hunter Clare, who was injured in the McMicken incident. And his comment to me was, yeah, Sharon, but as a first responder, I show up when all those other safety systems go wrong. So that's kind of how we have to look at this. Have we protected ourselves, the surrounding buildings, the people, the first responders in those cases where everything goes wrong? So it's a sad way to look at things, but on the other hand, if you approach it from that standpoint, then you have protected the public and protected the building owner and all the parties. So,
since you mentioned the public, I wanted to ask you, are there certain things or steps the public can take to minimize these incidents and protect themselves?
If I had to point to one thing, I'd say talk to your mayor and council, talk to your legislators, and make sure they understand the role that codes and standards play in keeping people safe. I mean, if you think about the fact that every day you go in and out of buildings and you assume they're safe, well, part of the reason they're safe is because those codes and standards have put those building plans and their sprinkler systems and all of the safety things through a rigorous review. And without good codes and standards for building safety, then you have much hazardous situations for people. So that I think is one thing people can do. Make sure they're educated before they install any of these systems in their homes, and make sure that they have the good codes and standards in place to make sure that buildings are safe.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sharon. That was great. Thank you for answering all the questions, and had a great time talking to you. Thank you.
Well, this is a really fast-changing industry, so I hope we have a chance to talk again in the future, because you got to stay on top of all these issues, right?
Yeah, it is really important, and everything, like you said, the chemistries and the codes, everything is changing so fast, and people are utilizing these, and often there are incidents occurring because people do not know the risk involved, and after that they don't know the right prevention measures and mitigating measures. So it is important that whenever possible we help them know of the risk and ways to minimize the risk.
Sounds great.
Thank you.